Yo! Today I'm going to be redrawing one of my first ever Copic marker drawings with, you guessed it, Copic markers. As a refresher, I did a sketchbook tour of all of my high school artworks that were all done with Copic markers. So here is a part of my Copic sketch marker collection. As you can see, there is a brush tip and a chisel tip. The thing that makes this system very special in general is that this is the marker brand that most professional manga artists use whenever you see a marker spread or colored illustration within the mix of their work. And then another caveat is that at the time, these were the main marker brand. And they will also offer refills for each individual color. So if you ran out of ink, there was no need to go out and buy a completely new marker. You could just buy a refill and it could replenish the marker's ink for multiple uses. Also, another thing to know is that I've been collecting markers since I was very, very young. So this collection was grown over the span of around 15-ish years or maybe more. So do not think that you need to go out and buy and empty out your wallet to acquire every single color in order to think you can create art with these. And like with most of my old Copic marker drawings I've done in the past, I will be using the Deleter paper brand for my art today. First up, I will be using this Pilot Color Eno pencil in blue. Blue helps the pencil lines not show up on the scanner. This will be my eraser pen. And of course, a eraser. Honestly, any eraser works. So for context, I'm basing my sketch off of this drawing that I did in the past. This is my very first ever Copic marker drawing. And I'm going to recreate it on the drawing I'm going to do today. But in order to save time, I did do the initial sketch on my iPad digitally. So here is a time lapse of me getting the initial sketch done, and I did not want to spend time refining it since that will be done on the paper, but at least got the bones of the drawing down. So when you do a redraw of a very old drawing, you do want to keep the bones of the original drawing, but then also want to add a new spin in accordance to your developed taste over the years. So now that I'm looking at the old drawing, people don't really hold books like that. Also for the guy character, I don't think people naturally turn their necks like that. And so I adjusted it so that he's actually also facing the front, but he still has his head facing that general direction. I also thought that if I wanted these characters to be a bit more interesting, I don't think they should both have the exact same expression. So I not only gave the guys a more not so happy expression, but I also gave him a nice pair of glasses. And then also, given that this will not be a monocolor painting, so this will not just be done with black marker, I have also took the liberty of changing the clothing to be a bit more color friendly, but then also took inspiration from modern clothing today. I also wanted to add a little something on the background, but not necessarily very background heavy. So I added some flora, some flying flowers, maybe a little pollen. This original drawing was giving me a spring feel, so maybe that is something I did want to try and replicate. And also same for the hair as well. It won't be in all black, so I took the liberty of giving more variety in the guy's hair, and then also the girl will also now have a ribbon and maybe a braid. Something a little more interesting. It is now time to transfer it on paper before line art. Here I got my nifty tracing light and it's illuminated. I actually had to turn off my lighting next to the camera or else it wasn't going to show up. You can see me carefully transferring the sketch. I'm not trying to get it too perfect, but at the very least, the majority and guidelines of the outline is transferred over. And ta-da! The sketch is completed. It's kind of hard to see on the camera, especially with the blue pencil, but it's there. So I will be inking using this Unipen fine line in 0.05, so the tip is going to be very, very thin. Also testing to make sure the marker doesn't smear the pen, which is also important to do before committing to a pen for a line work intended for Copic markers. So you can see I'm carefully putting the line. I do naturally have very shaky hands, so this part requires so much focus. So this here will be the real time. You can see how slow I really am going over each line. Also, I'm going over previous line to add some variety of thickness. If you zoomed in close enough, you will see a bit of the shakiness, and I'm just trying to not nervously freak out and then overline it, which is a very hard thing to do. Line art also takes the longest. I think from the length of my footage here, the line art alone took me around 3 hours. You can see, as simple as the drawing is, it's incredible how long line art took. But it does make it all the more satisfying when the line art is completed. And ta-da! I did do a marker drawing using a different brand recently. Think I'm going to try to replicate this coloring style that I did, but we will see. So I'm starting with a very light shade of the skin tone. So the trick with markers is that you want to build up from a light base layer all the way to your darker shadows. Mainly because once you lay down a very dark marker layer, it is very hard to dilute it to change the intensity of the value. And so I'm carefully selecting a base color and also slowly building up using darker colors. So I'm already adding very, very light shadows in the next color of this tone. And then to make it slightly darker and add a little bit more variety on the skin tone, I do add a very light wash of purple. Here is the layout with how Copic marker colors and shades are numbered. So the way I tackle most of my Copic marker drawing, I try to go from light to dark from section to section. So I would try to do the skin of one character first, and then the shirt of one character first, and then the pants, and then the hair. So I do it all separately, mainly because I don't want to be deciding what the next shadow layer of the skin will be at the same time I'm selecting for the next shadow layer for a green shirt. So in order to prevent context switching, I try to do coloring by sections. And here the skin of the girl character is completed. So now I begin coloring her hair. I did realize, so this will be the first marker where I found out ran out of ink, but I am adding a light wash. You can see it's kind of fading, but it's workable. And then I do intend to build up the shadows and the hair strand from there. It looks like her hair faded from the UV rays, but trust the process. It will be looking like healthy, luscious hair soon. I'm slowly building it up. I'm not jumping right into bringing the hair to completion. I'm just going layer by layer and slowly adding more volume and detail and definition to the hair. I also went ahead and colored the eyes here. And here I started working on the ribbon. And midway through, I decided I wanted to tackle through some of the floating flowers and flower petals. Now we are working on her green shirt. Purple is slightly mixed into it, but not as much as the skin tone. Now working on her pants. So at this point, the girl is mostly completed. I think I finally got to a place where I think she's good to go. I was also very hesitant on selecting a color for the book. I did not want something that was too striking, so did not want to go for a very bright red, because that was my initial idea. So I wanted to go for something more neutral. So I decided on a pink violet. Alright, time to move on to the guy. So same as before, very light layer, slowly build up. I did use a different skin tone, but on camera it looks really similar to the girl's. I was also deciding if I wanted his hair to be like black, but then I felt like it would be too similar in tone to the girl's very dark brown hair. I do have a soft spot for anime characters that have gray hair, so I think that was my thought when I decided to color his hair in gray. From the gray hair, then I decided that, oh, maybe I want to make his clothes darker. So now I'm building up on the dark black shirt here. It's a very humbling experience when you've done digital art for so long. Then you go back to doing markers. Not only can you not undo a line mark and that you have to commit to colors, you also have to think on the spot when you run out of ink and try to work around it. Because if I was drawing this on a deadline and then I had to go buy an ink refill online, that might make me miss the deadline. I also prefer to draw everything in one sitting, so I had to think on the spot for alternative colors, even if the color I decided was just too dried up to committed to a drawing. Copic marker drawing take much longer than digital art, so seeing the drawing slowly be covered up in colors, very, very satisfying. To contrast his dark shirt, I did decide to make his pants light, but then also did not want it to match the same color as the girls. I opted for a light gray pant. Do not know what a guy would look like wearing those colors in real life, but alas, it is a drawing. So you can see the guy has sunglasses. Admittedly, when I was drawing, I locked in too hard that I ended up coloring his glasses off frame, so I wasn't able to show you guys how I got there. So adding on to the spring feeling that I wanted from the drawing, I decided I wanted the background to be of a nice, beautiful blue sky. Especially with the flowers floating around, I think a blue sky would be the best at complementing it. But also, given that markers use up a lot of ink, in order to have a very consistent layer of colors, I need to color a large area. So I did the cheat code of saving ink, which is adding as much clouds as possible to break up the areas that will be in blue. So you can see I'm going over with a very, very, very light shade of blue. Deciding which section will be clouds and which section will be the sky. You can see when I add the initial layer, you can see a little bit of marker streak, but then when I'm adding a second layer, it evens out the color overall. So I'm slowly filling up the blue section. And I did get pretty far, and yeah, it ran out of ink, as we thought. Luckily, I did select this color knowing I had a refill, so let me show you guys how I refill Copic markers. Hopefully the camera focuses. So you can see this is the Copic refill. It comes in every single Copic marker that is offered. Here I am taking the broad tip off, and then slowly dropping in a handsome amount of refill into the marker. Then after dropping enough, you just shake it up and the marker is good to go again. Now we continue with adding the blue sky here. And finally, the solid blue of the sky is finished, thank God. I will now work on adding definition to those clouds. They're just slowly adding the cloud shapes. And that was significantly easier than the sky, thankfully. And so the background is now completed, but there is one more thing I wanted to do. So a lot of my old drawings, there were white speckles of white. In the past, I have achieved this effect by dipping a brush into whiteout and then just spray and pray. I was flicking it away on the paper. I'm hoping it does add a dusty effect, but I also don't want the white ink to fall on the characters, so I will be covering it up with sticky notes. I also made sure to cover up the area around me because I don't want the white ink to go all over my computer. and my camera lens especially. Yeah, I don't know if you can see it well on the camera, but see a bit of the white sparks. You can see my finger just completely covered in white out. And then to add a variety of different size of white dots, I went in with a Sakura Jelly Roll white gel pen. And then I'm just adding bigger circles, spreading it around. And then just one more quick check with the line art. I go over everything with very careful eyes and just refining the line art. We are almost done, guys. I'm so excited. And the drawing is done! Finally! And now I have a cool redraw along with my very first ever marker piece. I think this entire drawing took around 7 hours total, and that includes the very first digital sketch phase on Procreate. Damn. I snapped a photo here around the halfway point and then forgot to take another photo at the end. But there was way more markers on the side and the desk was beyond messy. But I think that's the beauty of when you enter a true flow state, is that you're just so focused on the drawing. You don't pay attention to the world around you and the mess on your desk. So that concludes today's video. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you in the next video and wishing you all an absolutely wonderful rest of your day.